This week's tip is about twisted stitches, and periodically I get a lesson where the knitter is twisting every other row or every row, and there are a couple of reasons why twisted stitches aren't great. Here's some twisted stitches down here, here's some twisted stitches up here. I'll talk about the difference in these two in a second. These are regular stitches here. You can see that the twisted stitches are smaller than the regular stitches, so your gauge is going to be different. So if you're following a pattern and it's expecting a certain number of stitches, you're going to have trouble making gauge. The other reason why twisted stitches aren't so great is this. If the fabric is twisted, it has this lacy appearance. There's a wide horizontal bar between the stitches, which you do not get with regular stitches. And if you want to see if you've got twisted stitches, when you stretch it, they twist at the bottom. Now on the bottom part, I have twisted stitches and the right leg is on top. And how these stitches got twisted is that for every row, I worked the stitches backwards. That is, for purl rows, instead of wrapping over the needle, I wrapped under the needle. And for knit stitches, I wrapped over the needle instead of under the needle. And sometimes I'll see this in lessons where knitters will follow the rule, well, it's always under the needle, so they wrap under the needle for knit stitches and under the needle for purl stitches, so it will alternate. And by the way, if you're a combination knitter, you are intentionally twisting the stitches, but you are working the resulting row through the back loop, so it produces the same result as this. Don't worry about it. This is only for knitters who then work those stitches through the front. Now, for this type of twisted stitches, how they are produced is that you work every row through the back loop instead of the front loop, and it will cause it so that the left leg of the stitch is twisting over the top. And so if you are twisting stitches and you want to, this is one way you can tell, other than watch how you knit, how those stitches are getting twisted. I've got a couple of stitches on a needle, and the first method is, let's say I'm doing a knit row, and normally I would go under the needle. In this case, I'm going over the needle. Over the needle, over the needle, over, over, over. Now if I were a combination knitter, I would then work the resulting row through the back loop, and that would untwist the stitch. But for people that are inadvertently twisting stitches, they then work the stitch through the front loop, and let's say normally if I were purling I would be going over, right? But if I go under, and this is harder to do. I'm always kind of amazed when I have students who are twisting every stitch. It must just take twice the amount of time to knit, because it's just kind of hard and clunky to do, and the stitches are tighter and they require more work. So now if I'm looking on this knit row, you can see that the stitches are not oriented properly, and the left leg is on front, and you can see that when I knit it, it is going to be twisting it if I work it through the front. So I'm going to work these through the front, and then we'll talk about the other way that stitches can get twisted. I'm going to work a plain row first so that I've got my stitches oriented properly. Okay, well, I don't need to work a plain row. Now, normally when I purl, I go this way, but if I go from behind and purl through the back, which is hard to do, so why on earth would you want to do this? Generally, people that have this problem only do it on knit rows, because this is just counterintuitive. Now, periodically you will see some patterns where you want to intentionally twist stitches, and they'll tell you to purl through the back loop, for example, on Bavarian twisted stitches, or certain types of Aran rib, there's twisted stitches. All right, and you can see that that is going to twist those stitches going in the opposite direction. Now, knitting through the back loop is actually easier to do. And generally, if people are twisting their stitches for this reason, they're only doing it every other row, because as I said, doing it on purl rows is difficult. And there you have it. Those stitches are going to be twisted as well. So twisted stitches are something that you do want to avoid. It is not very attractive, and the main reason is that it is really going to affect your gauge.